On day one, it's going to take us time. If we don't have access to all this data, it's going to put us behind the 8 ball by a matter of a month or more. And that's lives. How many would be lost as a consequence of that? I can't tell you. But the purpose here is to get, we talked a lot about with the governors about what the immediate needs are. We're going to employ the Defense Reconstructive Act to be able to go out there and dictate companies build and do following things. We need much more testing. We need much more masking. We need gloves. I asked them each to go, and I asked the National Governors Association through the Governor Cuomo and the ones on the line to let us know what their shortages are, what they anticipate. Because we're going to move on day one. That should be moved on now. Now. But if it waits, it takes a long time to get this thing going.
And when you take a step back and you look at the way the president is handling this, his refusal to concede, what do you think is really going on here? In your view, Mr. President-elect, what do you think the president is doing? What are Americans witnessing here?
Let me choose my words here. I think they're witnessing incredible irresponsibility, incredibly damaging messages being sent to the rest of the world about how democracy functions. And I think it is well, I don't know his motive, but I just think it's totally irresponsible.
Are you concerned he may succeed, that people may question the legitimacy of your administration?
No, I'm not concerned. The vast majority of the American people, they've already, all the polling data has indicated, although the Republicans who worry about it is higher, but over 78% of the American people believe it's, without question, it's legitimate. I just think it's, and I think most of the Republicans I've spoken to, including some of the governors, think this is debilitating. It's not a, it sends a horrible message about who we are as a country.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. Thank you, Vice President-elect Harris. Appreciate it. Nice to see you as well. Yes, appreciate it. You have said that lives could be lost if you don't start getting briefings from the Trump administration. And now here we are, more than 250,000 lives could be lost. Given that, how do you justify not taking legal action to get the briefings that you say are critical, that you say you need?
It would take a lot of time. It would take time. It's not going to speed it up considerably, in my view. And in the meantime, I am hopeful that I'm going to be able to get cooperation from our Republican colleagues in the Senate and the House, as well as the governors, to build a consensus as to how we proceed when we do.
But why not use every tool in your toolbox to get the information that you say you need to do your job and to do it effectively on day one?
I'm making a judgment based on many years of experience in how to get things done with the opposition.
Do you think you would win?
My judgment is that we'll get further along by actually working with our Republican colleagues now, and because the time in which we would win would not materially change necessarily. But it's still an open question. It's an open question. It could change.
So you haven't ruled it out? You haven't ruled out legal action against the Trump administration, against the GSA?
We haven't ruled it out.
Okay. And given the death toll now, more than 250,000 Americans who have now lost their lives, you have said that you would support a nationwide shutdown if scientists recommended it.
No.
You've spoken to scientists now.
Everybody asks that question every single time I stand here. It was a hypothetical question. The answer was I would follow the science. I am not going to shut down the economy, period. I'm going to shut down the virus. That's what I'm going to shut down.
So that's
ruled out. I'll say it again. No national shutdown. No national shutdown. Because every region, every area, every community can be different. And so there's no circumstance which I can see would require a total national shutdown. I think that would be counterproductive. But there are constraints in which the degree to which businesses can be open. For example, it's one thing to say that you can have, in a state that is there, where their infection rate is not as high, you can have a gymnasium open. It's another thing to say it can only be open 4 hours a day with X number of people. The church I go to, my Catholic church, they don't allow more than 40% of the people to come into the church. Those are rational decisions. It's not shutting down everything. It's calibrating based on what the threat is.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President-elect.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President-elect, and thank you, Mr. President-elect and Vice President-elect Harris. A question for you first, which is, what do you make of the fact that the president is having these calls with Michigan county officials amid his bid to overturn the election? He's going to be having also Michigan Republican legislators at the White House tomorrow. Is anything that he's doing making you rethink your strategy? I know you say that you don't want to have legal action right now. And what do you say to Americans, especially immigrant Americans who came to the United States looking for political stability and seeing all of the things that the president is doing?
Hang on, I'm on my way. That's what I say to them, not a joke. And what the president's doing now is really it's going to be another incident where he will go down in history as being one of the most irresponsible presidents in American history. It's just out of the, not even within the norm at all. There's questions whether it's even legal. But it's going to be interesting to see who shows up in this call to meet with the leadership. And this is going to, we've won Michigan. It's going to be certified. We're going to end up making clear that they're making clear that we won. And, but it just, it's hard to fathom how this man thinks. And it's hard to fathom. I'm confident he knows he hasn't won and is not going to be able to win, and we're going to be sworn in on January 20th. And I just, but far from me to question his motive. It's just outrageous what he's doing.
As he ups the things that he's doing, calling officials, is it making you rethink your strategy at all? Is there anything that he would be doing that would make you say, okay, we really have to go to court now? Or are you still watching what he's doing and saying we can still kind of wait and see what happens?
I'm not going to rule anything out or anything in, but at the moment, the strategy is not changing.
And if I could ask a question to the Vice President-elect, would that be
Sure.
okay? Vice President-elect Harris, you talked about your state experience. My question is there anything that you heard from governors today that made you specifically concerned about vulnerable populations, especially as I talk to Americans who say, I don't have the privilege to work from home. I don't have the privilege to social distance if I'm living in a house with multi-generations. Did you hear anything that concerns you specifically, and what can we do for them as a country?
Well, as the President-elect shared with everyone, we heard a lot from the governors, including that. Including the concern that African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, people who live in rural communities, people who, as groups of people, have historically been under-resourced and underserved. And so there was consensus among the governors, bipartisan consensus, that our federal strategy should reflect those concerns in a way that we support the states with the resources they'll need to get to the folks who have been often overlooked or ignored. And the President-elect, I think, has made it very clear that it's one of our highest priorities to support that. As you may know, in the Senate, I actually led what we called a Racial Disparities Task Force. And that approach is something that we will be incorporating in our administration to ensure that all people have equal access to resources, but also taking into account equitable distribution of resources based on need.
Thank you, President-elect Biden.
Let me add to that. One important thing to understand is there is and we've talked a lot about this, and we've talked about it when I was running, seeking the nomination as well. And that is that the idea of the brown, black, Asian American, Native American communities are always the first ones hit the hardest and the last ones who are brought back. We're going to flip that around. It's going to be really important to determine priorities based upon access to the information that's available, access to everything from the vaccine to other opportunities to be able to deal with helping the country, part of the country that's been hurt the worst. You know, 3 times as many African Americans have died than white Americans died from COVID. So there has to be a prioritization. That's why I'd like to know exactly what this administration has in mind in terms of their Operation Warp Speed and how they plan it. And that's what we talked about with the governors today. They all mentioned the need to focus on the communities that have been left behind, particularly Governor Cuomo. It's one thing if, for example, vaccines are distributed to all the Walgreens of America. No criticism of Walgreens, but you know, there's a lot of those facilities that aren't in rural communities and are not in poor communities, African American, Latino communities. So we've got to make sure there's access for them.
Thank you so much.